Can we vote to adjourn?
Apparently, I don't know.
You have that power.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I do have the statement that I'd like to read about the virtual meeting. So due to the governor's recent orders, all members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee are participating virtually this morning. And for virtual meetings, the committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. And at that time, they'll be recognized and be unmuted. When there's a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. And a committee member will be recognized and will raise their hand and state their vote at that time. Today's meeting is a public meeting, and per the notice published on, Patricia, you may have to give me the date that it was published.
I think it's fine. Just
okay. Per the notice that was published, the citizens can listen to the meeting if they contacted the city manager's office to make the necessary arrangements. And a recording of today's meeting will be available by next Monday. And that will be available on the city's website at www.cityofws.org /846/citizens-bond-oversight-committee. Okay, so with that, I will do a roll call. Heather, do you have the roll that you could call?
I can, yep. Mark Dunnigan.
Here.
Brenda Diggs is absent. Reverend Ford. Daisy Rodriguez. Gail Anderson.
Here.
Bill Hayes. Brian Heelan.
Here.
Melissa Vickers.
Here.
Mabel Stevenson.
Okay. In the absence of a quorum, we will skip item 3, which is the approval of the minutes for now. And I'd like to move into the project update. Let me pull that up. I've got it up here. So there were a few things that we talked about at the last meeting that we wanted to have some follow-up conversation on today. The first of which was the Carl Russell Community Center and that project. So I guess, Heather, are you going to give the update? Who's going to give the update on that?
Yep. You should be able to see my screen. Are you looking at that now?
Yes.
Okay. So this was included in your agenda packet. This was the council action request that approved the contract for Carl Russell Community Center renovations. And the big thing that I wanted to kind of draw your attention to on here is the list of the improvements. It has here the scope of work. So we're including the gym renovations, reading room renovations, new game room, carpet painting, signage, plumbing fixtures, updated exterior and interior lighting, ADA improvements, security improvements, landscaping, and pedestrian seating. And then the alternates were new kitchen, casework, shade structures, a partition, paneling in the gym, and rehab HVAC work. And looking through, if we go through the rest of the CARF, we get down here and it's talking about the budget for the project here. And in this paragraph, it tells us that they were able to because the base bid was below budget, they are allowing acceptance of alternates 1 through 5. So that was all of the add alternates that were bid out. So we're doing all of that base scope and the add alternates. And then if we just kind of wanted to run back really fast to look at the original project page and compare what was in the CARF to this scope, you can see that we hit pretty much everything that's on here. Painting was mentioned, pedestrian seating, all the lighting, signage, security improvements, landscaping, HVAC replacement. I believe the roof repair was being done separately, and then the game room and the gym. And the one item that's on here that I don't think was directly mentioned in the CARF was the gym equipment, but maybe Tasha can speak to if that was included somewhere else.
Hi, Heather. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question? I was actually having a conversation with William.
Oh, it's okay. Looking at the CARF for Carl Russell and what was included in the contract versus the project page, there was an add alternate on the project page for gym equipment. Do you know that? And that was not specifically called out in the CARF. Do you know if that was included in the contract or if that's being purchased separately?
William, is the gym equipment being purchased separately for Carl Russell?
The gym equipment?
It says rims, backboard,
The basketball
backboard.
goals, the backboards, those things.
All of that is not part of the project. The goal is to have new backboards ran on all of the goals that are down.
That'll be purchased separately outside of the project.
Okay.
Either the contractor will put them in or we'll do that before we open.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that, are there any follow-up questions after that overview about Carl Russell?
Just confirming the kitchen is being upgraded.
Correct.
Kitchen is being upgraded, and the work is anticipated to start shortly after Thanksgiving with that contractor.
I noticed in the write-up, Heather, there was a question about the MWB participation. Just for everybody's knowledge, could you explain that process? I think I understand what it is, but I'm not sure that everybody does that all day.
Yep. And maybe Jakira, I think, is on the call. She might be able to add a little bit in about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the goals that were established for this project were 8% MBE and 5% WBE. Magnolia Construction did submit goals of 0% MBE and 14.4% for WBE. And so they submitted an affidavit E, and they were required to go through the good faith effort process where they will demonstrate their efforts in seeking MWBE participation. And so the committee found that they did demonstrate a good faith effort, and they achieved 119.16 points, where the minimum is 115 points. And so they were awarded the contract.
And Jakira, that's a process that you go through fairly regularly on these types of projects, I would imagine, where you have a criteria that you're making sure that the bidding contractor has met during the process.
Correct. And the items in which they have to demonstrate the good faith effort, those are bound by general statute. So it's something that we don't, I won't say regularly, but it's just something that we see when contractors don't meet the established goals.
Any questions on that? That can be fairly complex, that particular component of it. Okay. Any questions on the budget or the scope? Because I think that there were quite a few questions on just making sure that we were getting as much as we possibly could into this renovation, because it may be a while before we're able to go back and do anything else in the building. So any other questions on the scope or the budget? Okay.
Great.
Let's see. Next on the agenda is the economic development bond projects.
Let me pull up our presentation on that. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over and actually let Evan Raleigh, he's our assistant city manager who's over these projects, talk a little bit, and Ken Mellett as well, who's our director of business inclusion and advancement, kind of give the update on these specific projects. I'll just be controlling the PowerPoint. So can everyone see the PowerPoint at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. Good morning, Chairman Donegan and members of the Bond Oversight Committee. My name is Evan Raleigh, and I'm one of the assistant city managers, and economic development is one of the areas of my responsibility. And we'll just kind of take you through where we stand with regard to our spend against the 2018 bonds that were set aside for the purposes of economic development. And just to review quickly, high level, there were 4 categories in economic development. I don't think this is on the slide, but I'll just run through it with you quickly. There were $7 million that was approved for general economic development site infrastructure acquisition. Not for specific projects, but basically a holding code that would allow us to have funds that we could tap as projects came to fruition. The second item was a $2.5 million that was set aside for Liberty Street redevelopment. The third item was $3 million that was set aside for the Southeast Ward economic development initiative specific to the Southeast Ward. And then there was also $2 million in kind of a fourth or fifth infusion now of, well, it's a new program, it's commercial redevelopment in blighted areas. This is the same program formerly known as revitalizing urban commercial areas. It operates in the same fashion, but we have kind of undergone a rebranding with this particular program, and you'll hear more about those. We'll go into a little bit of detail about where we stand on each of those particular initiatives in this presentation. So I think we are probably good to go to the next slide, Heather. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Ken Millett, who is our Director of Business Inclusion and Advancement. That is the department that houses our commercial redevelopment and in blighted areas program, and he's going to provide you a quick overview of the spend in that area. So Ken.
Right. Thank you, Evan. Good morning, committee members. This is Ken Millett. As Evan mentioned, I'm the Director of the Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. The $2 million that was set aside for this program, as Evan mentioned, it operates very similarly to the RUCA program, which is Revitalizing Urban Commercial Areas, which had rounds of funding in 2006. I believe the next was in 2011 and again in 2016. With this particular round of funding, 2 projects have been approved. The first was approved in November of last year and provided $152,000 for site improvements that included parking lot paving, exterior lighting, sidewalks. That project was completed this past summer. The second project that has been approved is for that is the photo that you see on the slide, which is an aerial of a property on New Walkertown Road that includes the construction of a brand new commercial building, as well as improvements that will connect the adjacent sites that you see there. That project funds have been approved, but it has not yet begun. The funding is available as both in the case of the first project I mentioned, that was entirely a low interest loan. For the second project that is not yet underway, that $300,000 plus is in the form of 50% low interest loan and 50% matching funds that are deferred and forgivable. The top picture that if you take out a magnifying glass, you will see is the areas of eligibility where property owners can apply for that funding. There are currently 27 areas, but council has asked staff to take a look at the areas that are currently eligible, see if there need to be additions, modifications to that eligibility. I would expect that recommendations would go in spring of next year to council for their consideration.
Ken, this is Gail.
Yeah.
Where was the first project? I've forgotten.
It was in the College Village area, where, if you're familiar with where Diamondback Grill and Bowie's Market are,
Yes.
that the building that's there is the one that received the first improvements.
Thank you.
Sure.
And one more question. The area on Liberty Street up near Smith Reynolds Airport, is that one of the, I can't read that map. I don't have a magnifying. Is that one of the areas that is included there?
There are stretches of Liberty Street that are currently included. The area directly across from the airport is currently not one of those. But again, we're taking a wholesale look at new areas that could possibly be included.
I'm just thinking, since the airport and the county are looking at doing some improvements of the terminal building, that might be an area to take a look at across the street there.
Right. Thank you. And I'll mention too that taking a look at the eligibility, that is not just an effort that Business Inclusion and Advancement is a part of. Our Planning and Development Services Department, we're partnering with them to be sure that all possible areas are included in the evaluation.
I'm going to ask Heather to advance to the next slide. I think I'm going to be driving the next portions, and feel free, of course, to ask any questions you have as we go along. But focus now on the $3 million that was set aside specifically for Southeast Ward, or economic development initiatives that are in the Southeast Ward. So again, the $3 million was approved by the Mayor and Council to be set aside for initiatives in this particular ward. To date, about half of those funds have been committed. $1.5 million specifically has been committed out of that $3 million to partially fund the renovation of the Bellevue Recreation Center. You've got a picture of it there on your screen. That's the current condition. The Bellevue Recreation Center serves as the host site for the city's SOAR and Youth Build program. SOAR stands for Successful Outcomes After Release. That's our program that is geared specifically to returning citizens or former offenders that are reentering the workplace. And our Youth Build program is focused on disconnected youth, if you will, between the ages of generally 16 and about 24. That program has been in existence for several years. It used to be funded by a federal grant. Once that grant expired, the city saw so much value in the program that we are now funding that with local dollars. But this particular center has served as the kind of the home for those programs, because if you're wondering why would we be committing economic development money to fund the rehabilitation of a recreation center, that's the answer, is because it really this center is not just a traditional recreation center. It's one that serves, generally speaking, kind of our workforce our workforce development initiatives are housed there. So this project is currently underway. It's anticipated, to be a $4+ million project at this point. It's undergoing, we're in the design phases now, and we'll hope to see a full-fledged renovation to make this a really top-notch facility once those renovations are completed. So I'm going to go to the next slide, Heather. So with respect to the money that's been, the bond funds have been set aside for the Liberty Street redevelopment. Again, it is $2.5 million to address blighted conditions along the Liberty Street corridor. Not any particular section, but just generally speaking, the Liberty Street corridor. Think the area between 14th Street and Liberty all the way up to the airport potentially. We don't have at this point a particular project that has been identified, and there's obviously no project, there's no scope and no timeline, but the funds again have kind of just been set aside for emerging needs in this particular area, which we know there are many. I have put a picture there of Cleveland Avenue Homes, which sits prominently along the Liberty Street corridor, and you all probably have heard that the city was fortunate enough to receive a $30 million Choice Neighborhoods grant from the federal government. After several unsuccessful tries, we were able to secure that grant, which is going to lead to a massive reimagination transformation of that area. There's a kind of an artist's rendering of what the vision is once that area has been revitalized. And I've included that, a mention of that project really because, in thinking about what these funds may be used for, there certainly is a possibility that some of this funding or all the funding could be committed to support this project in some way. There was a requirement by HUD and for the city to have a financial stake in this particular project, and this is one of a potential number of sources that we would use to contribute and contribute to the project. So that is to be determined, but that's a possibility that certainly is out there. Next slide, Heather. Oh, that's it. That went fast. I forgot we have a few categories to speak to, but if you have any questions, I certainly would like to entertain those before we move to.
What is the timing on the federal money and that the scope and the beginning of anything they are down on the choice neighborhood?
I know my colleague Tasha Logan Ford is on the call, and she has been really been in the driver's seat and our point person on this particular grant. It is a 6-year. It's a 6-year kind of project, if you will. It's a 6-year engagement, multiple phases of development. The first of which I am not entirely sure when it's, but I'm wondering if Tasha might be able to speak about it to the timeline here.
Absolutely. Well, committee members, the timeline for this is, as Evan stated, is a 6-year implementation period. The first phase actually focuses on housing. So it would be the construction of the first phase of housing that's supposed to occur on the former Brown school site. And then there's a period of time where we would have to do some community engagement to actually revise what they are calling the critical community improvement. This is what we had originally slated to occur somewhere along Liberty Street. Residents, as part of the initial input process for the grant application, share with us what they would like to see. They would like to see an area that would support some entrepreneurship. They would like to see an area that would focus on skill building, some type of trade. There's an interest in having some type of healthcare facility, dental clinic. They're interested in childcare. So there are a number of services that the residents have identified. Some of those might be along Liberty Street. Others might be more central to the neighborhood or associated with the construction of the new school facility, which is also part of the project. Funding from the 30 million choice will not be able to support the construction of the school facility or those critical community improvements. That's strictly for the housing. But there's a small portion of that 30 million, it's right around 4 million, that can be used to support that critical community improvement that we would need to combine with some of the bond dollars that are set aside for Liberty Street. But the timeline for that would not occur probably before 2023 or 2024 is when we would start on that piece.
Okay.
Are there other questions about the Liberty Street project? I know a lot came up previously.
I just have one question. Is there a final date by which these bond funds have to be committed? I'm just seeing that federal project being so far out there, but are these funds earmarked sort of in perpetuity for Liberty Street? Unless the voters change their mind or city council changes its mind?
Ben, can you speak to that specifically?
Yes, Gail, that would be correct. I mean, the funds are budgeted for Liberty Street. Those are city bond funds. There was a time when we were concerned, we would be monitoring what they call arbitrage, that we're holding on to bond proceeds and earning interest off of it. But the interest rate, environment is so low, that's not really a concern. So these funds will remain in this project account unless, as you noted, unless the council were to decide to reallocate it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Evan or Ken on those economic development projects?
Thank you both for all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, certainly.
Okay. So next up, we have the housing bond projects. And speaking on these will be Marla Newman, our Director of Community Development, and Tasha Logan Ford, who's the Assistant City Manager over Community Development and Housing.
So good morning. Good morning again. I'll go ahead and let Marla lead into the presentation. A big part of what we're doing with our neighborhood revitalization is tied to some specific development projects. There's also a portion of our 2018 bond dollars that is committed to the Choice Neighborhood Project as well. At the council meeting just on Monday, council committed $3 million of our housing bond dollars to support the neighborhood redevelopment associated with Choice. And then I'll let Marla walk through some of the projects that are underway.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. I'm Marla Newman. And if we could go to the first slide. One of the projects that we'll review this morning is Emmanuel Retirement Village. So you'll see here that the city invested $2.5 million, so just slightly under half of the development cost of $5.5 million for this senior retirement village that was sponsored by Emmanuel Baptist Church. The units are 14 duplex and 28 apartments. The picture in front of you is in front of the apartment complex, which is 2 stories. 10% of the housing units were set aside for households earning below 80% of the area median income. So in other words, what we would ordinarily consider low income housing. This particular development was completed late last year. This ribbon cutting and grand opening took place in November of 2019. If we could have the next slide. Ridgewood Place is a single-family subdivision that was started some years ago with a nonprofit organization. It changed hands over the years, spurred primarily from the housing crash and the recession in 2008. S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation stepped in to pick up the work that needed to be done. Here you'll see a picture of one of 4 homes that was completed thanks to the investment of $650,000 in single-family bonds. This particular developer, again, S.G. Atkins CDC, has completed other houses in the neighborhood, some with home funds, and home funds are targeted for those persons who earn less than 80% of area median income, and a combination of other city and private funds. They've been able to manage this development in such a way where they can use a combination of bank financing from Pinnacle Mortgage, as well as the city financing to help move these deals along so that the city money comes in last to help fill the gaps, or for those that are not home eligible to actually cover the construction cost. This particular development still has 35 developable lots remaining. And the city looks forward to issuing an RFP in the coming months to find developers to come in and complete the build out of this particular development. And then in terms of East Ward neighborhood revitalization, of course, if you'll recall, a portion of the 2018 bonds were earmarked for the East Ward as a result of the former council person for that ward foregoing the dollars, or to use the dollars for street and road improvements and sidewalk improvements, actually decided that it was better spent for housing in the East Ward. And so what you have in front of you is a photo, excuse me, of Southgate Apartments. This is a rehab of an existing apartment complex, 108 units. The city has loaned, I'm sorry, $150,000 out of our 2018 bond funds, as well as $395,815 in home funds. Again, those home funds are targeted for people who are at or below 80% of area median income. You'll see, though, that the total project cost is $13.4 million. So the city has put in a nominal amount, but an amount that really makes a difference in terms of closing a gap, because oftentimes there is a gap when trying to serve households that are at 80% and below. And so our money really has been the gap to close and make this deal successful. And these are the 3 main projects that we have to bring to you today under the housing bonds division. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if Tasha would like to expound on any of these anymore.
Marla, one question, the Ridgewood development, where is that located?
That is in the Southeast Ward off of I-40, going towards, well, there's a Ridgewood exit on I-40 heading towards Union Cross Road. So it's in the Southeast Ward.
Okay.
We also sent them the information item from October that was about the housing bonds. Do you mind if I pull that up and see if there's any questions about that?
I think it would be helpful to see the different categories.
Okay. All right. Okay. Can everyone see the information item? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that large enough for folks to be able to see?
Yes.
Okay. I think I can, yeah, okay. So I'll let Marla and Tasha kind of discuss the information here.
Sure. When the 2018 housing bonds were originally approved, we realized that there were several target projects that council had expressed interest in staff pursuing. The TURN program, we realized that we had several neighborhoods that were using the funds that were allocated from the 2014 bonds. So being able to replenish the TURN money was important. There was an effort to enhance our code enforcement system. We had a study that had been completed by the Center for Community Progress that was providing recommendations on how we could deal with vacant and abandoned property. So being able to allocate funds to support that initiative. We also began a partnership with For Everyone Home. The city of Winston-Salem was selected along with, was it 4 other communities?
2 others, San Antonio, Texas, and Indianapolis, Indiana.
To participate in an initiative to help us look at our policies around affordable housing and protecting affordable housing and combating further neighborhood deterioration. So there was a group of stakeholders that have been working on that for the past year. So wanting to make sure there were funds set aside to implement policy recommendations that may have come from that initiative. And then the remaining funds were set aside for targeted development, acquisition of property, as we're thinking about being able to secure land where we can develop affordable housing in the future, and then an employer-assisted housing pilot program. If you scroll down a little bit further, we also provided to council the budgets associated with each one of those initiatives, what has been spent to date, any projects that we had pending, and then the remaining balances, which is what you see here. So what we have left to spend in the various pots that have been discussed is about $5.7 million that have been allocated to specific categories and then would have to be spent as projects are coming online.
And along the same line as the questions that Gail asked earlier about the projects that Evan and Ken were discussing, this can stay in there until the projects arise. There's no sunset on when this has to be spent.
There's not. That's correct. So Marla, is there anything that needs to be added that I might have missed from the budget that we presented and the update we provided to council for the housing bonds?
Only that just wanted to highlight the fact that the Affordable Housing Coalition is also assisting with helping staff on the employer-assisted housing pilot. And so the Affordable Housing Coalition was actually an outgrowth of the Housing Study and Needs Assessment that took place in 2018, and it was recommended that we pull together a group of stakeholders who could help inform how housing is made accessible, how we expand the stock, how we preserve our existing stock. And so this Affordable Housing Coalition is actually one of the commissions that the mayor and city council appoints. And so they have been actively working with staff support to figure out the various ways that we can expand the use of these dollars to really meet the need that we learned was before us through the housing study.
Is the community participating in a meaningful way and you're getting good feedback on what's going on thus far?
Thus far, and actually the Affordable Housing Coalition is one of those vehicles for helping us understand where the community stands and what the feedback is. So it's made up of a number of stakeholders from different professions and actually from the community. So there is community representation on that. And then we also are a part of a number of working groups around the city that are made up of both community residents as well as various, I guess, staff of different organizations that all touch housing. And so with these various lines of communication, we're increasing the amount of community engagement and feedback. And we're actually, as part of a panel discussion just last night, talked about other ways to bring all of the talent around the table to have even broader conversations, because we recognize that there's engagement in a lot of different arenas, but how we bring all of those arenas together and be able to pull out all of those great thoughts that are bubbling up. So we're really talking about how we can have a more comprehensive conversation that is more broad-based for both those who work in this arena as well as the community. So it's an ongoing effort to make sure we have broad-based community engagement.
Thank you.
It won't be a one and done. It will be an ongoing kind of situation.
Any other questions on those? Nice job.
Thank you.
I think, Heather, I think that was the three that we wanted to touch on today, the three initiatives that we wanted to touch on today. Are there any other projects, any other initiatives that the committee would like to hear more about for the next meeting? I think, Heather, one on my list would be let's make sure that we are looking at our dashboard each and every meeting, because I think it's important that we sort of get the overall pulse of all of the projects as well as the individual pieces.
Absolutely. We worked on some updates. We just had some items that needed to get shared again internally before it went public. So we're working on kind of adjusting that reporting timeline so that we don't continue to run into that conflict, and we can bring that to you guys every meeting. Okay. Also working on getting the MWBE information kind of incorporated into that as discussed at our previous meeting. So
that'd be great.
Look for that at our meeting in January. We'll have the whole thing for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd be particularly interested in some of those projects like the multi-use path that were connected to the Business 40 improvements, or, excuse me, the Parkway improvements. Now that that's done, if we could get some sense of the timing on those projects as we go forward.
Great. And Ben can correct this if I say this incorrectly, but I believe our next meeting, we're going to try and touch on one or both of the recreation and streets bond areas, doing a similar update that like we did today. So kind of a more in-depth update on one or both of those, kind of depending on time.
And there was a good summary that you sent out ahead of time in the packet about the streets and which streets were slated for resurfacing and so forth. So if you didn't have a chance to look at that, please do. It was a pretty good summary of that.
And just to echo Heather's comment, that's correct. Our intention was to do kind of an in-depth overview of each of the bond orders with the committee. And so we've done economic development and housing today, and we would like to do the public safety facilities, just kind of systematically walk through them, each one of them. And now that some of them were coming out of the design process, we should have some renderings that we can share with you all, that type of thing. It's just very similar to what we did with the first committee. We wanted to kind of give you that in-depth overview when we were at a point that we could actually, show you some renderings, give you some visuals, as we start to move forward.
And I believe Reverend Ford joined us. If he is still on. Oh, wait, I don't see him anymore.
I'm on.
You
I'm
are
on.
here. Okay. So we have 5 now. If you guys wanted to take a few minutes to review the minutes, and then you could approve those.
Sure. Thank you. So I do have everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting that went out in the packet earlier in the week. And does anyone have any comments, questions, alterations they'd like made to those minutes?
They also are up on the screen, and if folks want me to scroll down, I can.
If you would please scroll a bit. Thank you. I was looking for this, if you don't mind stopping for a minute, Heather. I was looking for this because I remember that we had some conversation around Carl Russell. Mr. Rowe, are you going to have any further update on that today? I just don't want to lose this before we move on.
We did have that, Reverend Ford, at the beginning.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Yep. There's the documents that were shared were part of the packet that were sent out earlier, but Heather, would you be able to pull those back up just really quickly?
So the first thing that we shared was this is the council action that approved the contract for this work. And in this, I just wanted to, I highlighted for everyone that the scope was in here. And so you can kind of read what that includes, but it hits on the gym, the reading room, the game room, kind of all new carpet, paint, updated lighting inside and outside, landscaping improvements, and that pedestrian seating. The alternates were kitchen work, shade structures, a partition for one of the rooms, acoustic paneling in the gym, and HVAC work. And then if we scroll down in this action to where they actually talk about the bids and the budget, the low bidder, their estimate for, or their cost for the base bid was below budget. And so we were able to also include all of the ad alternates. And so that was who the contract was awarded to. And then if we compare that scope that's in the CARF to the project page, you can see that it pretty much hits on every single thing from this project page. The one item not specifically called out in the council action for the contract is the gym equipment, and our Recreation and Parks Director confirmed that this is being done. It's just not part of that main contract. They're purchasing it separately, and then either the contractor or someone in-house will install those items.
Okay, so the bottom line then, it sounds like, is that we have been able to cover all of the ad alternates one way or another? Correct,
yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Yep.
And I would move to approve the minutes.
Okay, have a motion to approve. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. We will need to do a roll call vote to approve the minutes. So Heather, if you could call the roll.
Okay. Let me stop this. Okay. Mark Dunnigan.
Approve.
Brenda Diggs. Reverend Ford.
Approve.
Daisy Rodriguez. Gail Anderson.
Approve.
Bill Hayes. Brian Heelan.
Approved.
Melissa Vickers.
Approve.
Mabel Stevenson. Okay, and that was approved unanimously by members present.
Great, thank you all very much. So I think that is all for our agenda today. Heather, Ben, anyone have anything additional that they'd like to bring to the committee?
Not this time.
do we have meeting dates for next year, or can we get those set fairly soon?
We'll probably keep with the same schedule of, I believe we're on the third Wednesday at 9. But I'll just make sure that there's no conflicts with holidays or things like that, and I'll send that out to you.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, and we'll send it out because our next meeting will be in January. So I'll get you the calendar kind of in advance of that, so that you can start putting that on there. Okay.
And Heather, you're going to update my email.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I do want to raise a point of clarification because I'm sure this question may be out there. These bond funds are protected from any budget cuts that have to be made to the city budget next year relative to shortfalls because of the pandemic, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, very good.
Okay. So we'll look forward for the meeting schedule to come out and get that on our calendars. I guess with no other comments or questions, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. And I don't think we have to vote on that one, so that's good. So, thank you all for your time this morning. We really appreciate what you're doing. City, for everybody from the city, thank you. You've done a ton
Absolutely.
of work together.
Everyone have a great holiday.
You all do the same. Bless
Yes. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you all.
you.